up, y'all? Welcome to the Raw Podcast. I'm your girl, Michelle Maxwell. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let me start off with this weather, y'all. It is hot, it is humid, and I am here for it. I am originally from Florida. I am Caribbean, so this tropical weather vibe is my vibe. Summertime is my season, and I hope wherever you're tuning in from, it is starting to warm up and you are getting ready for summer because summer is here. Today, I'm going to chat with you guys about myself. I'm going to give you a little insight into my story and my experiences so you guys have a better understanding of who I am, the things that I value, and why I see things the way that I see them. I am the daughter of a West Indian mother. My mother is from Trinidad. She came to this country on a shrimp boat all the way from Trinidad to Pensacola. She took that shrimp boat. She came here illegally, and yes, I am very proud of that. My mother's strength and tenacity to come to this country provided me the opportunity, obviously, to physically be here, but also to have such a blessed and privileged life in this country. So I just adore her and love her for all her sacrifices that she made to come here. My father's Scottish American and my grandmother was Eastern European, and she was also an immigrant. So I come from a long line of strong immigrant women, and I am here for it and proud of it. My parents met in a bar in Cape Canaveral, Florida. I was born in Cape Canaveral, Florida. I have two sisters. I have a half sister who, from my mother, and then I have my full-blooded sister who's a year and 9 months older than me, and we are Irish twins. I know people are going to debate that, but we are Irish twins. We are pretty much twins. So if you know us, you can vouch for that. But yes, pretty much in my younger years, I grew up in Merritt Island, Florida, and my parents had a seafood business, Mr. Fish Peddlers. And it was up until grocery stores started to add seafood departments into their stores that my parents had that business, because once the grocery stores did that, they put my parents out of business. So my mom and dad had me when my mom was 35 and my dad was 45, and they had their business up until I was about 5 years old. So when they lost their business, it really difficult financial times fell on my family. So we left Merritt Island. We moved to Orlando for about a year. My parents started like selling knives and doing these demos and like Kmart's and stuff. And one summer they like packed everything up, put everything in storage, packed up the family in the car, and we did this like family road trip up the East Coast. We went and visited some family, but they also would go to these Kmart's and sell these knives. So that road trip ended us in San Antonio, Texas. I guess like them selling knives, that's the trajectory that it took us. So we ended up in San Antonio, Texas. And for you all that do not know a lot about San Antonio, Texas is very Tex-Mex. It is rooted in strong Mexican culture, which is really, really beautiful. And but unfortunately for my family, those years in Texas were really, really challenging. My parents just weren't able to get on their feet. We just faced very difficult financial times. We were pretty much poor. And even though we didn't grow up in the hood, we were either next to the hood or like the poorest people in the middle class. And so San Antonio at the time just had a lot of gang violence and influence. And my sister was getting into trouble like throughout the years. I mean, I was even a badass kid because me and my friends would lie to our parents. We'd end up hanging out with who knows who. And we put ourselves in all these compromising situations. I saw a lot of things. Let me put it this way. By the time I was 14 years old, I had 4 guns pulled on me. My parents are like probably in heaven right now going crazy because they never knew that. But it was bad. And my dad at 53 had his first heart attack. My mom in her late 40s ended up losing sight in her right eye due to diabetes. So things were just like my parents were facing health issues. We didn't have any family or any support there. And my sister was getting in trouble and getting involved with just like not the right people. So after about like, I think it was like 8 or 9 years in Texas, my parents decided that it was time for us to go back to Florida. My mom had family there and my dad had friends there. So we had some roots there and it was time. My dad wanted to get us out of there. And of course, at like 14 years old, that's all I knew. So for me, I was just heartbroken. I was heartbroken. I mean, fortunately for me, I'm still best friends with my best friends from Texas, but at the time I didn't know. And but what I didn't know is that going to Florida was about to open up like such opportunity for me. So we moved back to Florida in 1994 that summer, and my sister, my mom, and I went first, and then my dad came. And that was interesting for my sister and I because Merritt Island, Florida is it was even smaller than it's still a small town, but it was even smaller then. So we got there and there weren't a lot of like mixed people or like racially ambiguous people. It was predominantly Caucasian and African American. And so like going to school, there was like racial tension and stuff. And it was just something we weren't used to because in San Antonio, everybody was Latinos. We were all brown. And even though I wasn't a Latino, we all were the same. It didn't really matter. So I never really faced those types of issues growing up in San Antonio. It was like one of the few issues I didn't face. But anyways, we made friends and whatever, but it was a little bit of a culture shift. But it was really great for my parents because they were able to get on their feet. My dad got a government job, was deputy commissioner of Merritt Island. My parents bought a house. So things were just really looking up. And for, when I was a kid, like a little girl in elementary and junior and middle school, I always so I was awkward. We all have our awkward stages in life. And I was really skinny. I had a small head and I had these really big facial features and these really long legs. And so kids used to make fun of me, mostly boys. And of course, my mom would always say, boys make fun of you. That means they like you. But it was not funny to me. So they used to call me all types of names about my three best assets now as I've grown into a woman, but they used to make fun of my teeth, my lips, and my legs. And they used to call me like Mrs. Ed and Roger Rabbit and Shanae and Shaniqua because of my lips. They used to call me Olive Oil and String Bean because of my legs. And it was just like mean. But my rebuttal, which I don't even know where I got this from, was that I was going to be a model. My half sister moved to England to become an RN. And so I used to say, my sister lives in England and I'm going to move there and I'm going to be a model and you're going to wish you never called me these names, whatever. So, where I got this whole I'm going to be a model thing, I have no idea. It wasn't like I was reading Vogue magazine or I had like this big fashion influence in my life. I don't know where it came from. But let me say this. I've manifested two things in my life. I've tried to manifest many more. I'm still working on it. But there's two things that I manifested. One is my modeling career, and the other one is my college degree. I went back to school, got my bachelor's. So those are two things that just throughout my life was something that I always wanted. So fast forward back to Florida. We're living in Florida, and I would tell my dad, like, Dad, I want to be a model. And he's like, baby, you know what? If they want you, they're going to pay for you. They're going to invest the money. They're going to have some skin in the game because the only way they'll make their money back is if they get you jobs. So he's like, we're not paying $500 for you to go take some pictures. That's not going to happen. So I was like, okay. So one day my dad came home and there was this ad in the newspaper and it was the Elite Look of the Year contest. And they were holding a local casting call at the Melbourne Mall. And so he called, made sure it was legit, came home, asked me if I wanted to do it. And I was like, yeah, Daddy, I want to do it. So we went down to the Melbourne Mall and there were like 400 girls there. And so we stood in line, did the whole thing, and they selected 5 girls. 2 of them were winners and 3 were runners up. And I was one of the runners up. And they said, you know what? Take some Polaroid or take some pictures. My sister took Polaroids and sent them to the New York Elite Modeling Agency. And that was my next step after I left the contest. So I did. And I ended up getting making it to, they like allowed me to go to the regional competition that year. And this is in 1995. So I'm like 15 years old at this point. And in Orlando at Planet Hollywood. So I go to this competition and I lose. Humble beginnings. So I was like, sad. But what came out of that is the lady that ran the John Casablanca School, an elite modeling agency in Winter Park. She was like, "You can come to our school for free," and that school's like $1,500. So she said she was even said that Vanessa could come to the school for free, and I said, my sister, and I said. And that wasn't her thing, so she didn't last long. But I was super excited. This was a great opportunity for me. And it's also like I'm the kind of person who really thrives on rejection. So if I lose or you tell me I can't, I strive. So losing that competition was like, this is my opportunity to like learn and become better and all this stuff. So I went to the school and they taught me how to walk on the runway, and they taught me the angles of my face and how to move in front of a camera. And I did a photo shoot. So after I completed the school, the competition came back up in 1996, the regional one, and I automatically was able to go. So I went into the regional competition in Orlando and I won. Was one of 40 in the United States to make it to the national competition in New York, at the Fashion Cafe. Now, the Fashion Cafe in New York was like a big deal because supposedly it was owned by supermodels, but I think that was just the whole marketing ploy. But like Naomi Campbell, Claudia Schiffer, all these supermodels own this Fashion Cafe. So I went up to New York to do this contest, and ETV did a big show on it called Making of the Supermodel. I'm all over that show. And because I talk a lot, my dad always said the camera follows the talker. Shocker. Anyways, so I did the competition and I lost again. Just losing left and right over here. But at the end of the day, I'm winning. So I lost, and it was the cutest thing because I'm all over the show, but I'm also at the very, like, there's a snippet where my dad and they interview us, and they speak to me about like losing and stuff. And then I say something, and then my dad says, I tell my baby, you win some, you lose some, but you get up and you keep going, and she's going to be a star one day. So keep the film, you hear? And it is the absolute sweetest, most amazing thing. And you could just see him beaming with pride. And I'm just so happy that, I was able to share that moment with him. It was absolutely beautiful. But, yeah, but what came out of that was I signed with the lead Miami, and that just like perpetuated my entire career. And so from there, at 16 years old, what I didn't realize is I had agencies like vying. Like I actually could choose which agency I wanted to go to, which nowadays would never happen. But then I had that opportunity. So I actually ended up leaving Elite and went to Next Modeling Agency. And I was with them for years. And I did the South Beach, Miami circuit for many years. I lived in South Beach when I was 16 and 17, by myself. I was good. I was a good girl. I went to school. I went to Miami Beach High, and then I would go model and do that whole thing. And when I got really busy, actually, I ended up just kind of like withdrawing from school. And I had this really awesome pediatrician back home who gave me all these medical excuses so I can get back into school in Merritt Island when I did. Long story short, I graduated with honors. And after I graduated high school, I ended up, instead of going to college at 18, I went to Milan, Italy. And it was so freaking amazing. It was like, can you imagine being 18 years old in Milan, Italy? It was like, it was exquisite. And it was like literally one of the best times of my life. So it was amazing. Lived in Milan for 4 months. That's where got discovered by my German agency. So when I was in Miami doing the whole Miami circuit, German catalog was really, really big in Miami at the time. And when the Germans just really loved me. They loved having a brown girl to complement the blonde hair, blue eyed girl. And I'm a catalog girl. I was more wholesome. I wasn't thin enough necessarily to do the runway stuff. So I would, throughout the years, after I left Italy, I would do the Miami circuit, but I would also go stay in Hamburg, Germany. That's where my agency model management was, for on and off for months. And they flew me all over the world. They flew me to South Africa and Mallorca and Guadeloupe and the Bahamas, and they just took me everywhere. And it was such a blessing. I got to travel the world and get paid. I got to experience different cultures, and it just really opened up my eyes. It showed me what diversity was. It was just such a huge blessing. So that was amazing. And then I kind of burned all my bridges in Miami because I just, I really struggled with my size in the industry. I mean, I was probably a size 4, but they really wanted you. Maybe I was on the verge of a 6, probably, but they really wanted you to be like a 000 or 2. 2 was like the max. So I struggled. I struggled with my weight. So after I left Miami, I went back home for 2 years, and then I met my best friend in Italy. When I went to Italy, I met one of my best friends. Then in Miami, we ran into each other. And we lived in Miami together. Then when I went back home, I just wasn't meant to be in Merritt Island forever, so I needed to leave. And I was really close to my parents, and my parents were older, and I didn't want to be far from them. So obviously couldn't go to New York because I'm not skinny enough. LA was too far away. So she was like, "You should come to Atlanta. There's an elite in Atlanta." And I was like, "Okay." So in 2003, my sister and I moved up to Atlanta. And that's where, again, my career took another pivot. So when I moved up here, we moved up here. My sister stayed for probably about a year, and then she moved back home. But I stayed. I signed with the Elite, and I was working. I was modeling. I was working at Hooters, which I'm not ashamed to say. But I was doing these sales meetings at Vanity Fair. This Vanity Fair is a brand that has a bunch of other brands under it, but they do intimate apparel. They design intimate apparel and make intimate apparel and bras and panties and stuff. So they had a design house up in Alpharetta, and guess where we moved when we came to Atlanta? My sister and I moved to Alpharetta. So it was right up the street from this design house, and I would do like sales meetings for them. And the head designer told me one day, she's like, "I want to measure you." And she took all my measurements, and she said, "I have been searching for a fit model for 9 years with your measurements." And I didn't really know what a fit model was. So she pretty much, for all those who don't know what a fit model is the live mannequin that companies build product on. And in the industry, people usually build on a smaller or medium because that allows them to grade their patterns up and down. And so I was a medium. I was actually a 34B and then a medium. And that was the base size for bras and panties. And so I became the fit model for Vanity Fair, and my career pivoted because in the modeling industry, to have consistent income is not necessarily normal unless you're a pretty big model. So for me, here I was. Now I have, I'm working 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, and I'm bringing in a couple grand a week. And I was like, wow, or a grand a week or something like that. But at 24 years old, I was doing well, especially in 2003 and 4 or 5. So I quit Hooters clearly. But yeah, and that began the next phase of my modeling career. I also at that time started taking classes to get my AA because I decided I wanted to, this was allowing me the opportunity to get that college degree that I wanted so bad, which I'm not sure why I wanted it so bad, but I wanted it so bad. I think it was something I was trying to prove to myself. So I was very studious. I was always really studious. So I started taking classes for my AA little by little. I didn't want to put myself in any student debt. So I was paying as I went. So in 2008, obviously the housing market crash, bubble, burst, whatever, just obviously impacted our economy. And Fruit of the Loom bought out Vanity Fair. So that gig ended. But at the time, I was in college. So I was also dating someone that was pretty successful. And I didn't really have to work. I think I went back to Hooters for a little while. But I, did, continued my college career for a few years. And then there's not a lot of design houses in Atlanta. There aren't a lot of companies that are based out of Atlanta to create product, but Spanx is based out of Atlanta, and it's such a small industry. And in the beginning, Spanx designed their product on Sarah Blakely, the founder, and other employees. But as the company grew, they needed a fit model. So I'm probably one of the most well-known fit models in Atlanta, because there's not a ton of us, because there's not a big market here. And the tech designers and designers brought up my name, so on and so forth, ended up coming to Spanx, and they hired me as their fit model. This was in 2013. Then I graduated college at 34 years old in 2014. And, pretty much I'm still the fit model at Spanx. I've been there for 10 and a half years, and they build product on my body. I am the base size model. And yes, we fit on all sizes. We fit on all the way up to 3X. So we are very body inclusive. But yeah, it's been such a blessing to have this gig. It's a beautiful gig, and I'm very grateful for it. So that's pretty much my story as far as like the trajectory of my life. I did lose my dad when I was 28 years old. He passed away, he was 73. And then November will be 3 years that I lost my mom. Those are my two greatest losses and biggest heartbreaks. Nothing can really happen in my life at this time that can break my heart as deeply as losing those two people have broken my heart. And I've had, heartbreaks and relationships end and stuff like that. But overall, I've had a really beautiful life. And the space that I try to live in is the space of abundance. It is important for me to look at the things that haven't necessarily worked out in my favor as um, opportunity. And I'm not going to understand everything, but I try to reflect on the things that are good in my life. And I'm really grateful for that mindset. It is super important. I think that's also what allows new opportunities and blessings to come my way. So that is pretty much my story summed up. And it's been a beautiful ride, and it's pretty much led me to launching my podcast. This is a dream of mine, like I mentioned in my first episode, and I'm just excited to be here. I have so much to say and talk about, but yeah, that's my story, and I hope that gave you guys a little insight into who I am. I am going to, on the next episode. So if you tuned into the first episode, you know that I launched on my birthday. I'm 44 years young. And my next episode is pretty much going to talk about being a woman in her 40s and what that means. I have a lot to say about that, because I'm not going to get into it too much, because I'm going to save that for my next episode. But yeah, I am loving my 40s. I am so excited to be in my 44th year of life. It is a privilege to be healthy and to be here. And we're going to dive into what that is all about in my next episode. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about me, and I will see you next Thursday.